Hey, what's up, everybody? It's BDF44 coming at you with another one. Okay, so, uh, forgive my eyes. I'm looking to the left of the camera because it's kind of tilted a certain way, but I am pretty sure you'll get the gist of what it is I'm trying to do here. So, I'm eating breakfast and I'm thinking about the Eastern Conference. Now, I haven't taken a glance at every roster, so I'm just going off the fly as I normally do. And parity in the Eastern Conference to me seems like the story. That's the name of the game. Last year we had parity amongst the entire league. This year, it's not a whole lot of parity because of my squad, the Lakers. In the Western Conference, we just expect if the Lakers are healthy, they're going to beat everybody pretty much in 6 games or less. So that's just what we all expect. Now, the Eastern Conference is an entirely different situation. What you have is a more calm, not that they had any issues last year externally that we were aware of, but there's no tension about free agency in Milwaukee. No tension about free agency. And they've upgraded quite a bit defensively. And I'm going to tell you the truth. Them not receiving Bogdanovich and keeping DiVincenzo was a blessing. That was not a bad thing. That trade was a bad trade. DiVincenzo is a player on the rise. He's not a shooter like Bogdan, but he's a much better defender than Bogdan. And I think he has more upside than Bogdan. I've watched Bogdan's game from afar when he was with Sacramento, and I like him because he can really score, especially when he showed me in that rookie sophomore game. He's a shooter. But more than not, he's not doing a whole lot. Now, granted, there are circumstances involving that. Buddy Yield, De'Aaron Fox, they had guys who were fighting for minutes at that two guard spot, and at times Bogey would be hurt, and that would be that. So a lot of times you would see games with Bogey. He would have good games. He'd get 20, 25 points, hit some threes, do a lot of good things. But then you'd have these games with Bogey. He'd have like 8 points, didn't shoot well, and he'd be out for a couple weeks. He'd come back, play well one game, not so much. He's not a consistent player. And it's one of those things where it's like, well, you give him a pass because of those circumstances I've already mentioned. But for Milwaukee, they did need shooting. But I think they're better off with DiVincenzo. DiVincenzo is a guy who can score the ball, is aggressive defensively. He steals the ball, he can get some assists, and his numbers have increased every year as he's gone on. This is a guy who they got at the back of the first round and didn't really have a whole lot of expectations for him, if I'm not mistaken. But he's turned into somebody who's really, really a nice player, and I thought he was going to help Sacramento quite a bit defensively. Now that he's staying in Milwaukee, he hasn't demanded out. He's played. He seems like I haven't heard any news, so I'm assuming he's being a good sport about things. He looks like he's now got an opportunity to start in Milwaukee with no Wesley Matthews in the way because he plays for my team, and Eric Bledsoe's out the way. They got a traditional floor spreading point guard, superstar point guard in Drew Holiday that I think meshes well with Dante DiVincenzo in terms of defense. Now they got one of the better backcourts in the league in terms of defensive play. Those dudes are going to be hounding guards. In the Eastern Conference, guys are going to get hounded by those two. So, in my mind, I kind of like Milwaukee more this year than I did last year. I look at the acquisition of Bobby Portis. I like it. Now, they did lose some size. I don't think the Lopez twins are still there. Those were good players to have. I think they still got Brook, but I know Robin's now in Washington. So they got to figure out their big situation. But like I said, I do like Bobby Portis. He's a scoring power forward, stretch the floor a little bit, wily attitude, not going to take a whole lot from nobody. Will hold his teammates accountable, to say the least, and is well liked from what I understand. So I like him going into that Milwaukee locker room. He's a good player that can help solidify the scoring around Giannis. I would love to see them get a bit more shooting. I don't. Again, I got to look at their roster. I know they got Wilson taking on a bigger role. I like him. He's a nice stretch four type of player. He's aggressive. I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do out there with bigger minutes. I think he can play probably multiple positions. So they have a different dynamic on their team. I don't think they're going to miss Eric Bledsoe. I didn't really love his game for Milwaukee. I didn't think he fit there very well. Drew Holiday is one of the best point guards in the world on both sides of the floor, so the upgrade is tremendous there. So if I'm looking at Milwaukee, I say they didn't really need a whole lot. Giannis doesn't need a whole lot to get him through a regular season, but he does need quite a bit of shooting and a very different play styles to throw at teams. Is the story there? They need to be able to become more versatile, and I think they're closer to being that than they have been. They didn't pull a Portland and just totally create an opportunity to be fluid in every play style situation, but they are closer to that than they were last season. I like the Milwaukee Bucks a bit more this year, but I do not know them to be the best team in the Eastern Conference just yet. But they're certainly going to be in that conversation with an MVP 2 times over in Giannis. The next team I'm thinking about is the Miami Heat. Miami could use an upgrade in the point guard position, in my opinion. I do like Kendrick Nunn and Goran Dragic, but I don't love Kendrick Nunn and Goran Dragic. Kendrick Nunn is getting better every year. It's not a whole lot not to like. He's more of a 2 guard, so you're just happy to have him, but you're not quite sure if he's going to take a jump, and you're not quite sure what they're going to do with his minutes. That's the story with Kendrick. And if Kendrick's playing on a different team, getting 30 minutes a game, suddenly you're looking at Kendrick totally different. But on this Miami Heat team, they're deep. They got a lot of guards. And for the production that you need from a guy like Kendrick Nunn, you would much rather have a defensive player, someone who's a bit more defensive than Kendrick is at that position, in my opinion. You got Tyler Hero, who's an offensive player with a whole lot of sauce. I love his game, but I still think he's a couple years off. He needs to get a lot stronger. He needs to continue to grow, and I think he will. The dude has so much sauce, footwork, flair to his game. So he's going to be someone that's going to make fans happy wherever he goes. And I like him as a player. They're talking about possibly adding him to certain deals for superstars. I think that's a mistake. You keep Tyler Hero and you just let him hatch. That's my opinion. You don't shop him. So them pulling out of the James Harden conversations, from what I've been told, that's a good thing. Miami should just stand pat and go with what they have. Jimmy Butler is a superstar. I don't think he's going to have a bad season this year. In terms of going downhill, I don't think he's exiting his prime just yet. I know that bubble series took quite of a bit out of him, but I do also understand him to have a whole lot in him left to play. So I don't see any drop off in Jimmy's game this year. I think he's going to have another great season. Same thing with Bam Adebayo. Bam Adebayo is a emerging star center. I think I've been pleased with him when I've had him on my fantasy teams. He's fantastic. His defense has just gotten better and better every year. His offense is getting better and better every year. He doesn't have too many things he can't do. He can shoot the ball. He can create for others. He can rebound the ball. He's got a lot of energy all over the place. So Bam is more or less a future superstar and is competing with Jimmy Butler for whose team it is. And I don't think there's anything wrong with his contract. I'm very happy with Bam Adebayo. If I'm Miami, there's nothing to complain about. You're happy with that guy. So they have a team that can get back to the finals, but I don't know that they got a whole lot better. They lost DJ. You know how high I am on Derek Jones, who's now in Portland. As I said, Portland now can switch and play in any role, any style, because of the acquisition of Covington and their guy, Derek Jones Jr. So now that they've lost Derek Jones Jr., it's going to be interesting to see what they can do guarding wings and things of that nature. I like the drafting of Precious Achiuwa. I think his name is Achiuwa. He's another big body, big, powerful big, basically another Bam Adebayo type of guy, another Clint Capella type of guy who's just going to be massive, rebound the ball, dunk, give you a whole lot of energy, play some defense, run the floor. They got another one of those guys. So if something happens where Bam's not himself or whatever, they can bring in Precious, and he's another high energy, high upside big with athleticism. So you got to give Pat Riley credit. I don't even think people see that kid coming, but Precious Achiuwa is on that team, and he is going to be an impact player for the Miami Heat this season, in my opinion. So, you look at the Miami Heat depth chart. I have to continue to qualify myself by saying I didn't even look at the roster before making this video. I'm just going off the fly. But the Miami Heat, I don't think they got a whole lot better, but I do not believe they got a whole lot worse. And because of it, they're still going to be in the mix. A guy like Kelly Olynyk, still a nice bench player to have, shooting threes at the center spot. So they have some things that I like on that team. But they did lose some things. Jay Crowder is no longer a part of their roster, So They lost some veteran depth. They lost some versatility. They lost some forward play. So I personally don't have Miami coming out of the East this year. I just think that they're good. They're not better than they were last year, and they would need to be in order to get to the finals. Teams around them got better. The Eastern Conference got better, and it's going to be interesting to see where Miami falls into place. I personally think they'll be no lower than a 5 seed, but I don't have them being number 1. Going forward, I'd like to talk about the Philadelphia 76ers. Really interesting situation because it's still pending. You just don't know if the Sixers are going to get involved in some trades. You have no idea if they're satisfied with the roster. I like Tyrese Maxey, the rookie they picked up. He's showing signs of being something good. Obviously, Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid going into year, 5 together? I don't love that fit. I never have, but I think that if you're going to make something like that work, you would need to surround them with shooting, and I think they've done a good job of putting shooters on this team this season. They got from under that Al Horford contract. That was a very good thing. They brought in Dwight Howard. That was a very good thing. Now they have a legitimate backup center for Embiid. If Embiid has to miss 20 games, they're not going to fall off a cliff at all because Dwight Howard is that good, and he still has enough in the tank to help you if he gives you what he gave us last year. That's somebody that's going to help you a lot. Philly should be overly ecstatic to get him at $3 million. Do you have any idea how underpaid Dwight Howard is at $3 million at this stage in his career? I want to say that the Dwight Howard that he was 2, 3, 4 years ago is not the guy that we're getting. He's in shape. He's healthy. He's happy. His space seems to be clearer. He seems to be coming into a space of his own in terms of his confidence, where he needs to be. He's grown up quite a bit. That's just the moral of the story is Dwight Howard has finally grown up, and he's ready to be a pro. And I think his last season was probably his most impressive season since his Orlando days. The dude has just really established himself as a serious basketball starter. And he's not even in starter's role, you know. So I really am very happy for Dwight Howard, even though he left our team. I think he's going to get a lot of opportunities in Philadelphia because I don't believe in Joel Embiid's ability to stay healthy. And I'm not completely sold that they ain't trading Joel Embiid, to be honest with you. I'm not quite there. You're dealing with one of the most trigger-happy GMs the world has ever seen in Daryl Morey. He will do whatever he wants, and he's not in love with bigs. He's proven that more than anyone else. So I can totally see him shipping Joel Embiid to the Rockets for James Harden if that situation comes about. I don't think anybody's talking about that. Most people think it's Ben Simmons. I think Morey would rather trade Embiid. Now, I don't have any evidence of that. That's just my mind telling me that. So take it for what it's worth. Philadelphia, of course, as I said, they added shooting. You do not like the idea that they lost Josh Richardson defensively. That kind of sucks for them. But bringing in Seth Curry was an upgrade tremendously on the offensive end, and they were more so deficient shooting the ball. So that was a fantastic acquisition. He changed his life for them potentially, along with the kid Maxey, who can shoot as well. There's a couple other guys on that team that need to be mentioned. Shake Milton is a guy who came along real strong at the end of last year, had a fantastic breakout type of second half. I think he's going to be a player this year for the Philadelphia 76ers, and I like him a lot. What else? Thinking about that Philly depth chart. So as far as Philly's concerned, I just like the fact that they've surrounded Joel and Ben with more shooting. Ben is a fantastic defender, one of the best defenders in the league at this point. So even though you lose Josh Richardson, you still have the ability of guarding guys because you have Ben Simmons on your team. And Dwight Howard helps with that big time. So I like it. Joel Embiid doesn't have to play as many minutes. He's not stressed to be healthy. You can forego playing him back-to-backs in situations and still feel good about going into these matchups, particularly in the Eastern Conference. So if I'm a Philadelphia 76er fan, I'm pretty much thinking we're going to the finals. And I'm more or less telling you guys that that's the team I think is the strongest in the East on paper at this point. I do. I think Philly's the strongest team right now. That doesn't mean that they're perfectly constructed. They're not. But on paper, they look like a better bet to me than some of these other squads. Moving on, the Brooklyn Nets. It's all about health. It's all about health. the Brooklyn Nets have a dynamic that I don't think a lot of people see coming. DeAndre Jordan and Jared Allen are very difficult to deal with. Together, they are extremely difficult to deal with. Shot blocking, rebounding, presence in the paint, tip ins, things of that nature. The Brooklyn Nets are going to have the upper hand on a lot of teams because of their ability to throw defensive bigs on the floor a lot. You're not going to see too many situations where they don't have a shot blocker on the floor. KD obviously is one of the best shot blockers in the game when he's right, and he looks right. Jared Allen, same thing. DeAndre Jordan doesn't block as many shots as you would want him to. Never really did. But he still poses the threat of doing so because he's DeAndre Jordan. You know, it's one of those things, it's like an optical illusion. You think he's going to block a lot of shots. He affects a lot of shots, but he doesn't translate to the stats. And it really doesn't matter because he is good enough defensively, especially with those two backing his play. And then they got the kid Claxton. I believe his name is Claxton. He's another young big. I like his upside. I think he's going to be somebody who can help them off their bench. And that's just their bigs. That's just their bigs. Now you start talking about KD. You start talking about Caris LeVert, who I think is a budgeting star in this league, who can make an all-star team or two before it's over with, maybe more than that from what I've seen thus far. If he can have a healthy season, the kid, he doesn't have too many weaknesses at all on the offensive side of the ball. Kyrie Irving, we know Kyrie Irving. Best dribbler of the basketball, period. Best deck move ball handler, shake you out your shoes guy to ever play this game. One of the best finishers at the rim who've ever played this game from the point guard position. He's up there with Tony Parker and them dudes in terms of being able to lay the ball up and score at a high clip in the paint. You're not going to find too many people better than him at any position, let alone the point guard position. So we know what Kyrie Irving's about. Shooting the ball, he can shoot it. He's Kyrie. You and I know Uncle Drew. So at this point, it's just about health for him, and can he keep his mind in a space that allows him to flow better with others. Kyrie Irving is such an independent thinker, such a guy in his own space, his own way of doing things, and I think the next level of evolution in terms of being a teammate is to start to reel it down so that he starts to incorporate other people and their ways of thinking into something that he will allow into his space. I think a lot of times when you believe in the things and you display the way that a guy like Kyrie Irving does, a lot of times you don't allow a whole lot in. You don't allow a lot of people to disrupt what it is that you believe. But you don't have to see it as a disruption necessarily. You just see it as yourself implementing a sense of solidarity in the presence of others, so that even if they think differently than me, even if we have opposite ends of the spectrum, we can still collectively come together for this particular goal. And a lot of times it's very difficult for certain types of individuals to separate how they feel and the desire to incorporate others into their circles. So that would be the next thing, I think, just from afar, looking at Kyrie Irving, just becoming a better incorporator of others, even though that they may not think the way you do or see the world the way you do. Finding ways to communicate with others, your common goals. So I think that's what it's about for Kyrie. He gets lost in the fold because of how independent of a thinker he is, how to the left he is to some of the more norms of our society. He's just a different kind of guy. And it doesn't rub people the right way from what I've seen. But all in all, we know he's a fantastic ISO player, fantastic basketball player in general. And I think the Brooklyn Nets, him playing with his boy KD, him being down there with Steve Nash, who's going to help put him in positions to succeed a little more so than he's probably had in his previous coaching situations. A guy who's going to understand his perspective a bit more than maybe some of his previous coaches have. And a situation that he's chosen for himself, which hasn't been the case in the past. So I think this is a situation that Kyrie Irving could potentially be happier than he's ever been, so long as they don't bring in somebody like James Harden to disrupt everything. So it's all about health for those guys. Unfortunately, I'm not picking the Nets to win because I don't believe in their health. I do not believe KD and Kyrie are good bets to make it through an entire 72-game season plus playoffs. I just don't. Now, if they are, they should beat everybody. But, nah. I know KD looks great. He hasn't played in 500 games. That's a lot more rest than anybody with an Achilles injury has ever had, and he's a lot more talented than anybody who's ever who's ever had an Achilles injury, with the exception of the name, of course, Kobe Bryant. Anybody else who's ever had an Achilles injury, to my knowledge, hasn't been that great at what they do. So you expect KD to be able to come back and be great because he's going to be great. You are what you are, and he's great. So you expect KD to come out and have games where he goes off for 50. Like, that's coming. But the question is he going to be there at the end? Is he going to be at that level in the Eastern Conference playoffs? Only time will tell. But I can tell you this. I'm not putting any money on that. I will not be putting any money on that. I'll watch from afar. I'll root for them. I hope that they do well. But I ain't putting no money on that. The next team I want to talk about, surprisingly enough, is the New York Knicks. I don't think they make the playoffs this year. I'm never going to put any money on the New York Knicks making the playoffs. It's never going to happen. What I can tell you is they have a nice young core. For the first time in about, I don't want to disrespect the Knicks. For the first time since before the Carmelo Anthony trade, they have a core that they can be excited about. A young set of players that are just going to go out there and hoop, who are not career Knicks, who don't have the Knick aura showering over them of losing and ineptitude and just bad overall GMing. These are young guys with a brand new mindset, with a brand new understanding, and hopefully no knowledge of the Knicks really. Obi Toppin, what's the young guy? Emmanuel Quickly, Kevin Knox, RJ Barrett. Like, these are all guys. Those four particularly give me hope. Like, suddenly I want to watch the Knicks because of those four players. I didn't mention Juju. I'm a Laker fan. I'm gonna always have an affinity for Juju. That's my youngin. That's just all that is. Just like any other of these old Lakers, I always have an affinity for all these guys. But I'm not in love with Juju's game, and I'm not in love with him standing in front of Obi's ability to start. If I'm the Knicks, I would love to trade Julius Randle at this point, so I can give Obi the keys to the car. And I know Obi's a terrible defender. Juju's not that great a defender. In fact, he's pretty bad from what I've heard. Playing for the Knicks, he's been even worse than he was with us, from what I understand. So, the move for the Knicks now is to probably try to get a draft pick or some type of compensation for Julius Randle. They got a couple of those power forwards that they signed from last year off the books. So it's not going to be the logjam that it was, but it's still a mighty logjam because of the two players that you have playing that same position. You should not have those two guys fighting for a spot on that team and not winning. Okay? So you have two high upside power forwards in Obi and Juju. There's only room for one. There's only room for one. And the choice is easy. It's definitely Obi. Just put that out there. It's definitely Toppin. So, that's what I have to say about that. I just feel like the Knicks are finally in a position to where Knicks fans can be hopeful that something worth watching will be available to them. Ain't putting no expectations higher than that. Just something worth rooting for. Should be on the floor this season. Congratulations for that. Okay? And I think Elfrid Payton is pretty good. I think Elfrid Payton's upside is still solid. He's a good defensive point guard, a good facilitator, orchestrator style point guard. Not going to be great scoring the ball, but he's going to give you some things that will help make others better. And that cohesiveness that he brings to the table, I think, is going to help bring together the young names that I've already mentioned. You're going to see those guys have a cohesive way of playing that maybe some other teams don't have because of a true point guard like that. So, yeah, I like the Knicks. They're probably not going to win more than 35 games, but the fact that they are projected in my mind to win about 35 games is a huge improvement from anything they've been over the last 10 years. So, congratulations to the New York Knicks. I'm actually excited about you. Okay. The Detroit Pistons. Detroit Pistons are awesome in terms of what they've done in the offseason. A lot of people say that, not a lot of people, but I've heard some people say that the signings that they've made have been a little strange and wacky. The Jeremy Grant signing was a bit wacky. I do think that he's a nice defensive player. Certainly helped every team he's ever played for in terms of guarding the best players. But if you're not a projected playoff team, a guy like Jeremy Grant is just not best utilized on your squad. It's not. But because they've gotten a lot better, why wouldn't they believe they're a playoff team? Why wouldn't they believe they need somebody who can guard all the best players? Right? If you're doing this thing right, you want to get the pieces that you need. Every team needs a Jeremy Grant. So they went and got themselves a Jeremy Grant. Now maybe they don't have what they need to make it make sense yet, but they have some pieces around them in place for many years going forward that should, if they do get better, help make them a solidified playoff squad. And that's what Jeremy Grant does. You just get him before you got the pieces that you need to make it make sense, but you got him, and that's a good thing. They got a bunch of young players just like the Knicks that I'm super excited about. Sekou Demboya is had a great preseason. He's going to be a nice player to have. Svi, another one of my young guys from the Lakers, should have never been traded. If it was up to me, he'd still be in purple and gold. That should tell you all you need to know about what I think of Svi. He's a shooter, a scorer, and has a lot of pop. He's JJ Redick with pop, as I've told people in the past. He can put the ball on the floor. He can step back, pop one in your face, three-point shot, good free throw shooter, doesn't mind getting to the rim, can actually get off the floor. And for his size, this is a very valuable young player. Should have never been traded. Should have never been traded. It's a huge mistake. So Svi, he's going to be fantastic for that team. Sadiq Bey, another young player they just got, going to be fantastic for that team. Obviously, Killian Hayes, their young point guard. They're giving the keys to him early. I wish Obi had that type of situation where someone could just say, here's the keys. I wish Halliburton had that situation in Sacramento. Here's the keys. Not every rookie's going to have that. Anthony Edwards not going to have that situation in Minnesota. So you got to appreciate the situation Killian Hayes finds himself in. He is immediately, the beginning of his career, going to be given the keys to the car and told to go. For a Detroit Pistons team that, needless to say, has been known for having really, really good point guards in the past. Remember Isaiah Thomas. So, with that being said, also want to mention Big Shot Chauncey, of course. So, I'm excited about Killian Hayes. They lost Christian Wood. That's going to suck a little bit. But, again, they got players like Sekou, Jeremy Grant, Mason Plumlee, who is fantastic on that team with Blake Griffin. Very interesting dynamic between those two players. I like what the GM did there. Why? Because both of your bigs are passers. It's a beautiful thing. I love that. Denver had that last year. Detroit has it this year. See, Detroit took a couple players from that Denver team. People ain't paying attention to. They didn't just take Grant. They took Plumlee too. I like that move. I really like that move. Blake Griffin's healthy. Looks good. Doesn't have as much pressure on him to play big minutes and be a star, but also has more backups for him to get a breather, for him to be allowed to get a breather. I love that dynamic for Blake Griffin. Suddenly this team doesn't look bad for him to be on anymore. Simple as that. I'm not saying they're going to win the East or win a championship, but he's not going to be wasting his time on a talentless basketball team like he's been on for the last couple of years. This is a team with a lot of upside. This is a team with some hope. This is a team with the good coaching. I like what they got going on in Detroit. I think they make the playoffs this year. I really do. Everything I've said has made me believe that they are deep enough. They went and got DeLon Wright, good point guard as well, another defensive point guard, somebody who, if for some reason Killian struggles, they can throw out there and he will be a strong, solidified piece that can start for them until Killian gets it right. It's just a lot of good going on and down there in Detroit. If you're a Detroit fan, you haven't been this excited since you won a championship. Like, this is a real thing. I do not know. I do have them making the playoffs. I wouldn't be surprised if they don't make the playoffs, but that doesn't matter. As long as everybody gets better, that Blake Griffin contract gets a little more mature, more tradable, you're going to find yourself in a position to get much better from even here. So congratulations to the Detroit Pistons. You are an exciting team as far as I can tell. I want to go through every team. We're already 30 minutes in. I'm going to keep going. I like Charlotte this year as it pertains to that similar path that Detroit's on, that the New York Knicks are on. Similar path. Not to say they're going to make the playoffs, but they can certainly be in the mix for 35 games or something like that. I don't want to say plus, it's a little more than I'm thinking, but about 35 games. And that's a good season. LaMelo Ball, I love LaMelo to death. I think the world of all the Ball family. I'm a Ball family fan. So at this point, it's like, I just can't wait to see him get out there and do what he does best. He's one of the best orchestrators out there, just like his brother. They're fantastic at what they do. He's not the defender that his brother is, but he has shown some flashes of being competent at the very least on the defensive side. And we know he's a scorer. We know he's not going to be bashful. We know he's going to be able to make guys better. And the pressure is not going to be on him to play very well every night because he does have 2 other point guards that are extremely capable around him, which in Lonzo's case seemed a little uncomfortable. But in LaMelo's case, playing for this franchise seems like a much more comfortable type of situation. Having Terry Rozier there and Devontae Graham, Melo does not have to be asked to score like Lonzo was asked to score. Be aggressive. No, if he's not being aggressive, he's not scoring, he sits down. And they're going to bring in some guys who are more than capable of giving you what they didn't have with him on the floor. So I love the dynamic. I like the fit for him. He should be given the keys to the car. He should be the starting point guard at some point, hopefully soon. But I like it. Miles Bridges is a year more mature. He's ready to go. Still jumping off of the floor. He hasn't had any major injuries. His athleticism is prime time. So we're going to see lobs galore going his way. He's going to be one of the more exciting players in the league with a guy like LaMelo Ball is passing the ball to him. We haven't even begun to see the best of Miles Bridges. It's coming. Highlights galore. Watch out for the Charlotte Hornets. P.J. Washington, one of my favorite young players in the league. He's just a very consistent power forward in this league. Another guy that comes to mind, has nothing to do with the situation at all, is Eric Paschall. You wish Eric Paschall could be in a situation like P.J. Washington, because Paschall's stuck on a Golden State team with a bunch of bigs, a bunch of everything. So, you just appreciate, once again, you just appreciate certain situations that certain players are in, and you look at other players and say, wow, I wish you were in this situation. I wish Eric Paschall from the Golden State Warriors was in the situation that P.J. Washington is in right now in Charlotte, because P.J.'s given the keys to the car in terms of being their starting power forward, and he's going to be one of their leading options of scoring the basketball. Probably option number 3 or option number 2. Like he's going to be that good. He's already shown himself to be that good, and I expect a very big season out of P.J. Washington from the Charlotte Hornets. What else do they have going on? I would love to see them get another big. I know that they drafted a big, Vernon Carey. I don't know his game. I'm not going to pretend to, but it's good to see that they addressed that point. They also got themselves another small forward, if I'm not mistaken, in the draft. I don't really know. I have to go take that look at that. But they did, from what I understand, do a good thing in the draft. So I assume that young pack of players, they're going to have their ups and downs, just like most rookies, I'd imagine. They're a young team, so it's going to be tough on some games, maybe even 35 games, maybe a little higher, just based on the fact that they have so much youth and not a whole lot of talent in their size position. You got your Bismack Biyombo's. I think Tyler Zeller is gone, but I'm not certain about that. You still have